everyone, and welcome to the June coffee subscription tasting video, where I'm tasting the 3 coffees we're sending out on the first Wednesday of June to all our subscribers around the world. Yes, you heard it right, we do ship around the world, although we're based in Tøyen, Oslo, in Norway. Of course, we send a lot of coffees within Norway, but we also send with DHL around the world. And of course, shipping can be a little bit expensive, but there's no such thing as free shipping. And normally the reason why it's a little bit higher price sometimes, it's because you have to customs clear or something like that. So if you live in a country like the US, for instance, where you now have to customs clear the coffee, it's more advisable to subscribe to more coffees, because the customs clearance fee is the same whether it's 1 bag or 6 bags, just so you know. So now you know you can subscribe from 1 to 6 bags. You can stop and pause the subscription at any time. And it works like this, the Tim's Choice subscription works like this, that I choose 3 coffees every month that we send out to all our subscribers. And then we make these videos where I taste the coffees so you can learn a little bit about them and also taste along if you want to. If you're wondering how I've set up this cupping, we have a tutorial on YouTube. It's pretty simple. You put coffee grounds in the cup, you pour the water on the grounds, you wait a little bit, you stir, you remove the foam, and then you wait a little bit more. And then if you want to taste with more than yourself, I recommend using a cup, where you take the coffee into a cup and then you taste. If you're a professional or something, feel free to cup with a spoon. But I think these days it's a little bit awkward, especially after the pandemic. Doesn't feel right to do it anymore. So June is here, and we're still waiting for some coffees from Africa to arrive. We're recording this a little bit earlier than June, so that means we are waiting for especially the Kenyan, supposed to arrive at the end of May, but too risky to wait so long. So hopefully we'll send out some Kenyan coffees in July. And Ethiopian coffees are also on their way, so hopefully we can send those out in August. There's some amazing coffees this year. I've finished most of the coffee buying, except in Finca Tamana. And especially the El Puente coffees were really good quality this year. We found some fantastic lots from Nacimiento and El Vikingo, some exciting projects with the biophilia, so there's a lot of fantastic coffees to look forward to. But these coffees are from last year's harvest. Finca Tamana is the farm that harvests the latest in the year, and those coffees normally arrive like November, the beginning of December. I think it was late November last year. But since we do shade drying and grain pro storage at farm level, where it's low temperature, we vacuum pack the coffees, we store it in cold temperature warehouse here in Norway. The coffees stay fresh for a long time, so I'm not so worried about that. And in fact, these coffees taste really good now, and I'm so excited to have them in the summer, because I really feel that they are very nice to drink when it's hot weather. They're quite juicy and sweet and like very easy to use for iced coffees and so on. Cool, we sent out 3 coffees from Tamana last month as well. If you know me well, then you know that I'm mainly interested in tasting different cultivars from the same farm or from different farms, because I feel like that's what's the most important when it comes to developing coffee quality. Of course, a lot of people like to work in the process. I see process more like almost like a preservation of the quality that is inherent from the tree and from the soil. So my focus is to kind of work with the farmers in order to maintain the quality or even improve the quality by working better with the soil. We're implementing more shade trees on the farms we buy from. We're actually testing biological farming techniques with biophilia in Mexico on all the farms we buy from in Latin America and also at Tamala. And we're now, after 1 year of the trials, it's kind of, there's some mixed results, but we are still hopeful. We're in transition. And I've already cupped a few samples where the quality is actually much better than the conventional farming techniques. So that's exciting. Nevertheless, we are not there yet where we have changed all the farms we buy from to regenerative farming practices, because it will take time. But at Tamana, I've been working very closely with Elias since 2012. In order to improve, so many things on the farm. So we started with the easy stuff, which was the process. I'm a fan of washed coffees. They're more kind of subtle. You taste more the taste of place, I think. You taste more of the cultivar flavors, less of the ferment and microbe flavors from fermentation. We certainly don't do any infused coffees or stuff, or co-ferments or stuff like that. I'm not interested in that. There's nothing wrong with it if you like it, but for me that's not interesting. I want to taste what a Bourbon tastes like. I want to taste like what a geisha tastes like, without adding more flavors to it. And if the coffee isn't good enough, that means we have work to do in the farm. So we need to improve the soil, we need to improve shade and so on. And just recently we bought 1,000 shade trees, which sounds like a lot, but it's nowhere near enough to cover all these farms in Colombia. We're planting some in my farm in Finca Tamana, and we're also planting some at Finca Tamana. But you know, in general, Elias is now on board. We started with the process, as I said. We have installed a cupping lab there with a rust sample roaster. Elias has built a warehouse on the farm so we can store the coffee in cool conditions. Much more dryers, so he has more drying capacity with shade on raised beds, covered with plastic so it protects from rain because it rains a lot there. We're doing lot separations, so every single picking is kept separate. We quality control every single picking and so on. So there's a lot of work that has been done into the logistics and processing. And for the last years, we have also started to plant more shade. I've been really pushing Elias to do this. And his idea now is that whenever he stumps the coffee trees, because the coffee trees, when they grow too tall, it's getting more difficult to pick. And the pickers don't really like to pick coffees from tall trees because the cherries are on the top. So that means Elias has to cut down the coffee tree and it will regrow and produce more after 2 years. So whenever he does this, he will plant shade in that lot of land where he stumps the trees so that the shade can grow with the coffee. So every time he stumps now, he plants more shade, which is great. And shade is important because you preserve more nutrients in the soil, more moisture. You kind of decrease the high temperature and increase the low temperature. So the environment for the coffee is more stable. You get denser coffee, higher quality coffee. There's so many benefits. You get less weeds. Of course, Elias doesn't use herbicides anymore. They do manual cutting of weeds. So there's so many things that you have to work on in order to improve the quality of the coffee. And it takes so much time because to improve soil, it takes time and a lot of work. Gradually, the coffees have become better, I think. And also, you know, when I started buying coffee from Tamana, I think there were 3 cultivars, or maybe even 2. It was Variedad Colombia and Caturra. And since then, he's planted Castillo, Papayo, Geisha, SL28, Ethiopian varieties, has Arbol Oro, what we call. He has Caturrón, Bourbon, Pink Bourbon, you name it. Probably close to 20 different varieties now, Java. And they all have different flavors, I would say. Some of them very similar, like Caturra, Castillo, and Colombia, very similar, but genetically they're also quite similar. And then you have some of the best ones for me is the Java, the Bourbon, the Caturrón, very distinct flavors. So this is how I like to work. It takes more time than just doing the processing. With the processing, you can get results immediately. With the changing cultivars, it takes 5 to 10 years to develop a new cultivar on the farm. So you have to be patient, but the reward is there. So we had 3 different cultivars last month. It was Colombia, it was Papayo, and then it was a field blend of Geisha and SL28. This month we have 3 new or different cultivars that I'm very excited to taste with you. So let's get started. The first one is actually a very traditional cultivar. One of the first cultivars to come to the Americas. It's a Bourbon. It's kind of the mother tree of all coffee cultivars in the Americas. Bourbon and Typica are the 2 first ones that came. So most of the cultivars that are in the Americas are somewhat mutants or babies from these trees. I love a good Bourbon because there's something to it. It's quite complex, but it's very subtle. It's like you have to really search to describe the flavors. I do get a little bit of vanilla flavor. I get a little bit of red fruit flavor. There's some florality here, but it's very subtle, but it's so kind of rich and juicy and sweet. It just feels right to drink it. I don't know what it is with Bourbon. Yeah, definitely some red fruit there, like berries. Definitely the vanilla flavor in the finish. Definitely a little bit of florals up front, I think. This is a mix of 3 different types of Bourbon because they are planted more in a small hill behind the farm. There's all planted with Bourbon. There's some pink Bourbon, which is actually, when we've tested it genetically, it's actually an Ethiopian cultivar. Then you have yellow Bourbon, and then you have red Bourbon. And yellow and the red Bourbon are more the traditional Bourbons. But because they're planted a little bit mixed, so they just go in and pick everything and just mix it together and then process it together. So it's not separated like this is pink and then there's not enough trees to do that in order to make it logistically viable or economically viable, I think, for Don Elias. So it's easier for him to just take the 40 pickers, they go in, they pick that one day and that's it. Very sweet, very balanced, very juicy coffee. Subtle flavors, but fruit, florals. And if you have a hard time finding these flavors, I understand. It's hard for me too. But this is coffee flavor. It's not like every coffee has to like jump at you and like, I taste like tropical fruits. If it's like that, it's normally because of some kind of process. It could be a natural or some core ferments or whatever. And I understand that that's easier to describe and sometimes more fun. But as you kind of go, you tend to prefer more of the subtle coffees, at least for me personally. I also liked, loud naturals in the past, but I'm more into these kind of more subtle coffees now. Makes it more interesting, I think, and a little bit more difficult to describe, but I like a challenge. Ooh, so good, so good. The second coffee is a completely different beast of coffee. It's so distinct. I can smell it where I'm standing now. It's so herbal. And I know that not everyone loves this herbality. I simply love this coffee. And it's so stable from year to year. It's so distinct. Has a lot of this herbal, floral kind of combination of flavor that really reminds me of, when you eat habanero chili or some kind of floral chili. It's both like green, like bell pepper green, and then very floral and fruity at the same time. So distinct. And if you've followed us for a while, you probably understand that this is the Caturrón cultivar. Caturrón is actually Hybrido de Timor mixed with Bourbon. So last month we had Variedad Colombia. That's Hybrido de Timor mixed with Caturra. Caturra is actually a mutant of a Bourbon tree. The mutation was that the Caturra tree is shorter and produces more. Was discovered in Brazil, so that was planted because it's short, easy to pick, produces a lot of coffee. Bourbon is a more fragile, big tree. It's very susceptible to leaf rust, but somehow it has been cross-pollinated with Variedad Colombia, or Hybrido de Timor, and then became this cultivar that is stable. So I don't know if it was man-made, I don't think so. But Elias got some seeds from a neighbor some years ago. He planted it. They call it Caturrón. We sent it for genetic testing, and fair enough, it's highly likely that it's Bourbon mixed with Hybrido de Timor. So kind of a hybrid cultivar. And it's so distinct, very, very clean, high acidity, very herbal, very fruity, quite floral as well, but a different type of floral like geisha. It's not like that. It's more like when you eat a coffee flower, it's kind of like a little green in flavor. That's the way it tastes like. And super distinct, very loud coffee. I remember the first time I tasted this coffee, I brought it to an exporter in Colombia. We cupped together there. They both said, oh, this is tank flavor, tank flavor. Tank flavor meaning it's over fermented or something. And I'm like, no, because we don't ferment this coffee very much. I brought it next year as well to the same office. They said the same thing, but it tasted the same last year. And we discovered that it was the cultivar that was just so distinct. Going back to the Bourbon now. Then you taste more of the fruit, florality, a little bit of stone fruit maybe. Very interesting. So second coffee, Caturrón from Finca Tamana. First coffee, Bourbon from Finca Tamana. The third coffee, I have already mentioned this cultivar. It's the Caturra. This is a mutant of Bourbon, which means it was just a tree that was shorter, produced more. Genetics are pretty similar to Bourbon. It's just one kind of genetic tweak that made the tree shorter. Very popular in Colombia for many, many years, until they had a huge outbreak of leaf rust. Caturra is very susceptible to leaf rust. So then Café, the governmental, or the Coffee Federation, not the governmental. The Coffee Federation owns a research department called Café. They already had Castillo and Variedad Colombia seeds, and they distributed it to most farmers in Colombia. So just within a few years, the Colombian production was back again, even though leaf rust almost killed all the Caturra trees. I would say Caturra is, at least on this farm, is pretty similar to Variedad Colombia. And genetically, they are quite similar. This has a little bit of like chocolatey flavor, milk chocolate, a little bit of nuttiness, I would say, a little bit. I suspect that nuttiness comes from leaf rust attack, actually, because in a good year, the coffee will taste a little bit more towards fruit, a little bit less nutty. This is not very nutty, but it has a little bit of it. Still some fruit flavor, but less of the herbal flavors that the Variedad Colombia that we sent out last month has. So it's not as herbal, it's more like a kind of milk chocolate, a little bit of nuts, a little bit of fruit, and that's it. I thought it was interesting to send this coffee out. We don't have a lot of it anymore. Elias doesn't produce a lot of it anymore because of the obvious reason. There's so much leaf rust every year that he has to spray a lot, and last year was not too much leaf rust than the following or the previous year. But the plan is actually eventually to remove the Caturra completely and replace it with something more distinct like Caturrón or Bourbon or something like that. We're not quite there yet, and we're using part of this Caturra a lot for biophilia trials now, because we need to have some fragile cultivars to test whether the biological farming is working or not. If you all tested it on like very resistant cultivars, it wouldn't be so interesting. So we're keeping the lot as it is. And I still find this to be a very good coffee. It's very kind of traditional, more coffee flavor that you can expect from Colombia. Where the sweetness is probably where you you have to appreciate the sweetness and not look for, crazy flavors, because this is not a crazy flavor coffee. So there you have it. Old school Bourbon mixed with some pink Bourbon. New school Caturrón, Bourbon mixed with a hybrid, and then a mutation of Bourbon, Caturra, which is also old school. It's been in production for many, many, many years in Colombia. Actually, in the old days in Colombia, most of the coffees were Bourbon grown in shade. And then they started to technify the farms through Café. They recommended to plant Caturra, cut the shade, have much more trees per hectare, produce higher yields, and so on. And what do you know? Leaf rust arrives, because that's just the way it is. If you do monoculture, full intensity farming, the coffee trees are not designed to grow in the full sun. So that's why you start doing the hybrids, of course. So it's kind of it's a debate whether this is good or not, but at least it creates some diversity. And I highly recommend every farmer, if there are any farmers watching this, to diversify their farms, to have more cultivars, just in case you have leaf rust attacks and so on. Great, I hope you will like these coffees. If you don't know anything about our coffee subscription, go to our website. Click on Tim's Choice, that's the subscription we're talking about now. And you can subscribe to 1 to 6 bags. You can stop and pause and resubscribe at any time. We ship around the world. We ship in Norway. It takes a couple of days only to get it into your mailbox. So it's pretty efficient, and you save a little bit of money. And also, a lot of times we have smaller lots that we buy specifically for the subscription, because we know we have a use for it. So if I find a lot that is like 5 bags of coffee or something, we try to squeeze that into the third bag, because it's too hard to pass good coffees, even if it's small volumes. Until next time, I hope you will have a great June and enjoy the summer.